Welcome back, dear traveller, to the world asleep. Tonight, we're not drifting among stars or ancient seas, but descending through soil, through silence, through the slow pulse of the planet itself. Beneath every step we take, beneath the rhythm of oceans and the roots of mountains, something waits. For centuries, humanity has wondered what lies below. Not just stone and magma, but perhaps an entire hidden world. A world of light without sun, sky without stars. A world that might still be breathing, just beneath our feet. This is the hollow earth, a theory balanced between science and legend. Some say it's pure fantasy, a relic of a time before we knew what burned at the planet's core. Others whisper that it's more than myth, that beneath the crust, vast caverns and lost civilizations endure, sealed away by time. The truth may never be known, but the mystery itself is what keeps the world dreaming. If you find peace in the quiet of these stories, in the sound of history, imagination and sleep weaving together, remember to breathe with us for a while. These journeys take time, and your presence keeps the lantern burning. A gentle like, a quiet subscribe, small gestures that keep this world alive for the next dreamer who wanders in. So close your eyes to the surface world for now. Feel the hum of the earth beneath you, steady and deep. Imagine it hollow, not empty, but full of wonder, alive with whispers of ancient suns and forgotten skies. Tonight, we travel inward, not outward. We follow the oldest human instinct, to explore what cannot be seen, to listen for what the earth might still remember. The night is calm, and the descent begins. Beneath the hush of stars and the weight of centuries, we take our first step into the mystery. Welcome to the world beneath our dreams. Chapter 1. The Cavern of Beginnings. Beneath the quiet hum of the night, we begin our descent. The surface world grows distant, its winds soften, its stars fade, its pulse slows until all that remains is the sound of your own breath, mingling with the steady heartbeat of the earth. The air grows cooler here, not cold, but ancient. The kind of stillness that feels older than memory itself. As we move downward, stone becomes history, and history begins to dream. Long before any man measured distance or named the constellations, long before we drew maps or cracked the crust of the world with machines, people looked into the dark mouths of caves and saw eternity. They felt the breath of the earth rise from below and believed it was alive, not merely a planet, but a body with blood and bone, soul and shadow. Every civilization had its story of what lay beneath. To the Greeks, it was Hades, the shadowed realm of the dead, where rivers of memory and forgetfulness flowed side by side, and every soul passed into silence. To the Norse, it was hell, cold, endless, and waiting beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree whose branches touched the heavens. To the Mayans, it was Xibalba, a labyrinth of fear and reflection, where those who entered faced trials that mirrored their own hearts. And in Buddhist lore, there was Shambhala, not a place of punishment, but of peace, hidden deep within the earth's folds, glowing like an unseen sunrise. Each of these realms spoke of something more than geography. They were reflections of the human condition, our yearning to find meaning in endings, our hope that beneath decay lies continuation. The underworld was not always a place of terror. For some, it was a womb, a beginning waiting beneath the end. The earliest humans painted on cave walls not just for beauty, but for communion. When they entered the deep caverns of Lascaux or Altamira, torches flickering against the stone, they stepped between worlds. The paintings they left, running animals, spirals, human hands, were not simply art. They were the Earth's own heartbeat translated into light. The echo of their chant still seems to hum through those halls, as if the rock remembers. There in the dark they felt connected to something vast, something that watched from within the stone itself. It's no accident that these earlier sanctuaries of humanity were underground. To enter them was to return to the safety of the womb, to the silence before language, to the pulse that preceded thought. The earth below was not just death, it was origin, and yet, for all its symbolism, the underworld was also a mystery that invited fear. The ancients saw volcanoes erupt and imagined that the gods below were angry. They felt earthquakes and believed the underworld was shifting in its sleep. When gases rose from cracks in the earth and induced visions, priests and oracles declared them divine messages. Beneath Delphi, the fumes that gave voice to the oracle were said to be the breath of the planet itself, the exhalation of wisdom from an unseen depth. To descend into the earth was never simply an act of curiosity, it was a rite. Even in myth, only certain people could cross that threshold. Heroes, shamans, kings. Odysseus sought answers from the shades. Orpheus braved Hades for love. Dante descended through circles of shadow in search of truth. Again and again, descent became the shape of transformation. Death before awakening. And so the earth, in every story, became the great teacher. It tested the brave, swallowed the greedy, and sheltered the wise. As centuries passed, the myths of gods and spirits began to merge with new voices, explorers, philosophers, and later scientists. The sacred became the speculative. The language changed, but the longing did not. We still wanted to know what lay beneath. The old temples became laboratories, the oracles became instruments, and the mysteries of the soul became questions of structure and motion. In the 17th century, an astronomer named Edmund Halley, the same Halley whose name would one day belong to a comet, proposed something extraordinary. He imagined the Earth as a shell, hollow within, containing concentric spheres that spun around a luminous core. To Halley, this was not fantasy. It was an explanation, a way to make sense of the planet's magnetic field, which shifted unpredictably in ways he could not explain. If the compass wavered, he thought, perhaps it was the motion of inner worlds beneath the crust, turning in silence beneath our feet. Others followed. In the centuries that came, philosophers and dreamers drew new diagrams, each more elaborate than the last. Some believed there were entrances at the poles, vast openings that led to inner suns and lands untouched by surface storms. Others spoke of civilizations within, peoples who had escaped catastrophe on the surface, surviving in secret through millennia, building cities of crystal and gold in subterranean light. But long before these theories found paper, their roots had already been planted in the soil of myth. The hollow earth idea did not come from science alone. It was born from memory, from the deep, ancient instinct that the earth's heart could not be lifeless. Imagine for a moment standing on a quiet plain at night. The sky above is a dome of stars, each one distant and silent. Beneath you lies the crust, the mantle, the molten sea of iron, or, if the dreamers were right, a second sky, an inverted world glowing from within. It is not hard to feel the temptation of that thought. The symmetry is perfect, a heaven above and another below. In this mirror world, mountains might rise upside down, rivers might flow in reverse, the sun, instead of rising in the east, might hang fixed at the centre, a sphere of soft light illuminating eternal morning. The ancients who imagined such realms were not fools. They were poets of perception, trying to give shape to the unseeable. And perhaps, in their myths, there was a kind of wisdom science is only beginning to rediscover, that the world is not simply what we see, but also what we feel resonating beneath us. that the ground, solid as it seems, is full of sound, vibration and energy. The hum of the earth, measured today by geophysicists, is real. The planet sings at frequencies too low for the human ear, a ceaseless drone produced by the waves, the wind, and the slow trembling of the crust. Even in silence, the earth is alive. Maybe that is what the ancients heard. The low pulse beneath mountains, the echo in the deep caverns, the murmur that moves through stone. They didn't have instruments to measure it, but they had imagination. And imagination has always been our oldest form of truth. In the sacred cave paintings of the Paleolithic era, we can already see it, that impulse to connect the outer and inner worlds. The bison and deer, drawn in ochre and ash, were more than symbols of life above ground. They were prayers to the life below it. To descend into those painted chambers was to enter the earth's mind, to speak with its memory. And when the artists emerged again into daylight, they carried something of that silence with them, an understanding that all creation begins in darkness. Even now, explorers crawling through vast cave systems speak of the strange calm that takes hold when you are hundreds of meters beneath the surface. The air becomes thicker, older. The world above seems to vanish. The only sounds are your heartbeat and the drip of distant water, echoing endlessly in the black. Some have called it peaceful, others overwhelming. But all agree that it feels like entering a place that was never meant to be seen, a place that remembers before we did. The hollow earth theory may have been born in the age of reason, but its spirit is as old as these caves. It asks a question humanity has always asked. If the heavens are vast above us, why should the earth be solid below? Why should creation hide only upward? What if the miracle we call home has more than one layer of life? As the centuries passed, these ideas took new shapes. Explorers began to see the earth not as a mystery to fear, but as a body to be mapped and measured. And yet, even as they dug deeper, their discoveries only multiplied the unknowns. For every cavern found, there were 10 more they could not reach. For every layer of stone they studied, another secret waited beneath it. In a way, the scientific earth became as mysterious as the mythic one. Seismographs revealed an inner world of waves and densities, layers that ripple and flow like invisible oceans. The more we learned, the less final our understanding became. The earth, it seemed, would always keep some part of itself hidden, and perhaps that is what draws us still. The desire to reach a place that resists knowing. The hollow earth might never be proven, but it reminds us that mystery is not the opposite of truth. It is a part of it. The ancients, the philosophers, the explorers, all of them were looking for the same thing, a reflection of the unseen. Whether they called it Hades, Hell, Xibalba, or Shambhala, each name was another word for the same yearning. To touch what lies beyond reach, to find continuity in the hollow between life and death, heaven and soil. When we look back on these stories now, it's easy to see them as fantasy, but imagine what it meant to those who first told them in candlelight, by fire, or beneath open sky. They were speaking not of geology, but of faith. The earth was not just home, it was destiny. Everything we are and everything we become begins and ends within it. And as we leave behind the sacred myths of the ancients, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of a new kind of belief, one shaped not by temple walls but by telescopes, not by prophecy but by mathematics. Yet even here, in the bright dawn of science, the old dream lingers, because as the light of reason rises, it always casts a shadow. And in that shadow, the mapmakers of the impossible begin to draw. Chapter 2. The mapmakers of the impossible. There's a moment in every age when imagination outruns what instruments can measure. In that space between knowledge and wonder, Entire worlds can exist, unseen, unproven, but deeply believed. The hollow earth was born there, not as a single claim, but as a quiet rebellion against the idea that mystery could ever be fully mapped. It began with astronomers and philosophers who looked upward to the heavens and found their gaze falling inward instead to the depths below. The year was 1692, and Edmund Halley, mathematician, astronomer and companion of Newton, stood before the Royal Society of London with a strange proposal. The earth, he declared, was hollow, not in fragments or tunnels, but as a vast sphere composed of concentric shells, each one turning gently within another like celestial gears. Between those layers, he imagined atmospheres, magnetic fields, and perhaps even life. Halley was not a mystic, he was a man of calculation. His theory arose not from dreams but from data, the erratic shifting of the planet's magnetic field, which he could not explain by known physics. If compasses wavered, he reasoned, it was not because of human error, but because the Earth itself moved from within. Invisible continents might rotate beneath the crust, changing the currents of magnetism like tides of an unseen ocean. He presented his theory not as fantasy, but as logic, an attempt to understand the unseen machinery of the world. And yet, beneath his mathematics, something deeper stirred. The human need to believe that the Earth, like the cosmos, had layers of meaning, each one waiting to be uncovered. From Halley's equations, a lineage of dreamers emerged. They were the cartographers of what could not be proven. Scientists, sailors, mystics, and poets who would spend centuries tracing lines on maps that led to the impossible. By the early 19th century, the idea had taken root in a nation built on exploration, the United States. Its fields and frontiers stretched endlessly westward, and its imagination stretched just as far downward. One man in particular gave shape and fire to Halley's quiet theory. His name was John Cleves Sims Jr. Sims was a war veteran, a lecturer, a man of conviction. In 1818, he wrote an open letter to all the world, proclaiming with passionate certainty, "The earth is hollow and habitable within." He believed that at the north and south poles lay immense openings, vast circular gateways through which ships could sail into the interior world. Inside, he said, existed continents and oceans untouched by surface life, a paradise untouched by war or winter, where civilizations flourished in perpetual light. He sent his declarations to universities, congressmen and kings. He called for expeditions to prove him right, and though few took him seriously, he did not stop. He lectured in crowded halls, drawing diagrams of the earth like an apple cut in two, its hollow core radiant with promise. Sims's zeal ignited a small but fervent following. Among them was James McBride, a Cincinnati philosopher who wrote a book expanding on Sims's visions, and later Jeremiah Reynolds, a fiery newspaper editor who turned imagination into action. Reynolds convinced Congress to fund a naval expedition to the South Pole, not to find colonies or trade routes, but to search for the entrance to the inner Earth itself. For a brief moment, the United States flirted with the idea of sending ships into legend. The proposal fell apart, yet the dream refused to die. It drifted from the halls of politics into the pages of literature, where it found eternal life. In 1820, the poet and polymath Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote of caverns measureless to man. Edgar Allan Poe, inspired by Sims's ideas, would later pen the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, a tale of polar exploration that ended in a white void, a descent into the unknown. In those words, the hollow earth became not merely a hypothesis, but a symbol of all human curiosity, the longing to step past the edge of what is known into the trembling dark beyond. By the mid-1800s, the theory had begun to evolve beyond mere geography. Some saw it not as a place, but as a philosophy. In Germany and Scandinavia, mystics blended the hollow earth with theosophy and ancient myth. They imagined Agartha, a hidden kingdom within the planet, ruled by wise beings who guided humanity from below. Others spoke of Shambhala, a radiant city of peace and knowledge, glowing like a sun beneath the Himalayas. To them, the interior world was not a physical location, but a metaphor for enlightenment. To travel inward was to awaken. The centre of the earth was not a hollow of stone, but a hollow of the soul, a quiet chamber where truth resided, waiting to be found. Meanwhile, the outer world continued its relentless march toward discovery. Telescopes revealed the stars, microscopes unveiled the invisible. The earth itself began to yield its secrets to mining and science. And yet, even as technology illuminated the world above, the world below remained wrapped in shadow. Throughout the 19th century, explorers pressed toward the poles, those imagined gateways into the hollow. The Arctic and Antarctic were vast blanks on the map, untouched and inhospitable. They were places where fact ended and legend began. When the British explorer Sir John Franklin vanished into the Arctic ice in 1845, searching for the Northwest Passage, his disappearance stirred more than grief. It rekindled an old suspicion that perhaps he'd gone too far north, past the known world and into another. Newspapers speculated, dreamers theorized, and storytellers expanded upon the myth. In Europe, writers like Jules Verne seized it with brilliance. His journey to the centre of the earth transformed science into wonder, guiding readers through a labyrinth of prehistoric worlds and glowing seas deep within the planet. Verne's vision was filled not with fantasy for its own sake, but with reverence, the idea that even the most rational mind should leave space for awe. That same spirit echoed through the decades. The more humanity discovered, the more it realized how much remained unseen. Beneath the feet of miners and engineers, caverns stretched for miles. Fossils of deep-sea creatures were found in mountain stone, suggesting that the earth had folded its history inward. Entire ecosystems were discovered in caves untouched by sunlight, where fish glowed faintly with their own inner light. Tiny living proofs that life could endure in places we once thought impossible. By the turn of the 20th century, the hollow earth had become both a scientific curiosity and a cultural mirror. It reflected our two greatest desires, to know and to believe, to measure and to dream. In 1913, a physicist named William Reid published The Phantom of the Poles, arguing that Earth's crust curved inward at the Arctic and Antarctic, forming vast openings hundreds of miles wide. He claimed the aurora borealis, those curtains of green and violet light, were caused by the inner sun shining through the polar gaps. Reid's reasoning was flawed, but his poetry was undeniable. He wrote of the planet as a breathing creature, inhaling light at one pole and exhaling it at the other. Soon after, another writer, Marshall Gardner, expanded the idea further in A Journey to the Earth's Interior. Gardner even built a model of the planet, a sphere within a sphere, complete with a glowing core. He argued that the interior world could sustain its own atmosphere and gravity, that continents could flourish on the inside surface, just as they did on the outside. He believed that explorers who vanished near the poles had found their way inside, and that ancient myths were records of their encounters with the civilizations below. It was a theory both intricate and tender, not science, perhaps, but hope disguised as geometry. Hope that there was more to Earth than rock and heat. Hope that the unknown was still large enough to hold us. And as explorers like Amundsen, Peary, and later Byrd pressed into the polar regions, their triumphs and silences alike became fodder for legend. When Admiral Richard E. Byrd flew over the Arctic in 1926 and later over Antarctica, rumours spread that he had seen not endless ice, but green valleys and rivers, a glimpse, some said, of the world within. Though his official reports described only snow and sky, whispers persisted that his private journals told another story. The hollow earth was no longer only a theory, it had become a secret, a truth said to be guarded by governments, hidden from the world to preserve order. Its geography blurred into conspiracy, and its mythology became modern folklore. Yet beneath the speculation and the secrecy, the same yearning remained. The same desire that moved Halley to equations, Sims to letters, and poets to dreams. A desire to imagine that the world we walk upon is not finished, that beneath our certainties more waits. The mapmakers of the impossible were not wrong in their spirit, only in their measurements. They understood something that modern certainty sometimes forgets, that wonder is not the opposite of reason, but its beginning. Every discovery starts as a dream, every equation as an act of faith that truth exists somewhere beyond what can be seen. Tonight, as we walk in their footsteps, we're reminded that every map is both revelation and illusion. It shows what we know, but also what we choose to leave blank. The hollow earth was one of those blank spaces, an echo of human curiosity carved into the shape of a planet. And though science has since filled that space with molten cores and magnetic fields, the deeper mystery endures, for even now the Earth remains largely unexplored beneath 5 miles of depth. There are caverns bigger than cities, tunnels carved by rivers long vanished, and microbial life that thrives in the darkness like a heartbeat beneath the surface. Perhaps that is the truest version of the hollow Earth, not a vast kingdom of light, but the quiet persistence of life where no light should be. Not a paradise hidden from man, but the proof that mystery never truly leaves us. The dreamers of centuries past looked for inner worlds and found poetry. We, with our instruments, find pressure and heat. Yet both visions meet in the same place. The belief that the world still holds secrets, that it is more than its surface. And as the compass needle steadies and the maps of the impossible give way to the charts of exploration, a new frontier begins to glimmer through the mist, a landscape of ice and wind, where myth meets magnetism and the horizon curves towards silence. Ahead of us lies the next chapter in this descent, the frozen thresholds of the earth, where imagination and endurance meet, the poles that never were. Chapter 3: The Poles That Never Were. There is a special kind of silence that only lives in the farthest corners of the world. It is not the silence of sleep or stillness, but of distance, the kind of quiet that swallows even the memory of sound. The explorers who reached the ends of the earth described it as almost holy, a stillness so vast that it pressed upon the heart like a weight. No birdsong, no tree, no echo, only the endless white, the circling winds, and the faint hiss of the human breath against the frost. And it was here, in the unreachable north and south, that many believed the gateways to the hollow earth would be found. The idea took root in the early 19th century when John Cleves Sims Jr. and his followers began pointing to the poles as the great entrances into the world within. In their minds, the earth was not sealed, but open at its top and bottom, immense circular mouths in the ice wide enough for ships to pass through, leading into the hidden interior. They called them the polar openings, and for decades they lived on maps and in imaginations as places of possibility. The reasoning was simple but alluring. If the earth was hollow, then somewhere its crust must give way. The poles, remote, inhospitable and poorly understood, offered the perfect mystery. To the eye of the dreamer, they were not ends but beginnings. For centuries no one had seen what lay beyond the Arctic Circle. Maps mark the region not with coastlines, but with clouds of ink curling Latin phrases that meant only "here be dragons." The Arctic was a mirror of our ignorance, a white void reflecting human longing. Even before the hollow earth theory, ancient texts had whispered of northern paradises. The Greeks spoke of Hyperborea, a land of eternal spring beyond the north wind, where the sun shone 24 hours a day and death held no sway. The Celts called it Anwen, the shining realm across the frozen sea. The Chinese legends of Huanshu described crystal mountains and rivers of mercury at the world's crown. Each culture placed its paradise just out of reach, past the known world, and as sailors began to push farther north, these myths hardened into theories. Perhaps, some thought, these were not heavens of spirit, but physical lands, hidden by ice, protected by nature's cruelty, waiting to be found by those brave enough to endure the cold. By the time the 19th century dawned, exploration fever had consumed Europe and America. Ships set sail toward both poles, driven by ambition and the quiet hope that one of those frozen horizons might finally open into another world. The age of discovery was turning into the age of endurance. It was during this time that the figure of Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd emerged, a man whose life and legend would forever entwine with the myth of the hollow earth. Byrd was no mystic. He was a disciplined explorer, a naval officer, and an aviator of remarkable courage. In 1926, he flew over the North Pole, or so it was believed, in a daring mission that captured the world's imagination. Later, he led massive expeditions to Antarctica, charting vast regions of the continent for the first time. But what drew him into myth were not his official reports, but the rumours that followed them. In his lifetime, Byrd's achievements were widely celebrated. Yet after his death in 1957, a strange document began to circulate among enthusiasts of the hollow earth theory, a supposed secret diary written during his Arctic flight. In it, Byrd allegedly described something impossible, a lush green valley beneath the ice, filled with rivers, forests, and even creatures resembling ancient mammoths. The diary spoke of warm air, strange luminous light, and an encounter with beings who told him that he had entered Agartha, the inner world. Historians have since dismissed the document as a fabrication, its authorship uncertain, but to those who believed, it was confirmation. The poles were not barren wastelands but doorways. The great explorer had seen paradise with his own eyes and returned to tell the tale, only to have his discovery suppressed by powerful hands. The story grew. Some claimed Byrd's expedition had been silenced by the US government, that his findings were sealed in military archives, hidden to prevent panic or misuse. Others claimed the Nazis, obsessed with occult knowledge, had sent expeditions to Antarctica seeking that same inner world, that they had built bases near the supposed entrances, hoping to contact the ancient race within. As the 20th century unfolded, the polar regions became both a scientific frontier and a mythic one. The real explorers, those who measured temperature, wind and ice, revealed a harsh truth. The poles were not gateways, but graveyards of ambition. Dozens perished in storms that could freeze a man's breath before it left his lips. Whole ships were swallowed by the moving ice, vanishing as if consumed by the earth itself. Yet even these tragedies only deepened the legend. To those who believed the lost expeditions had not perished, they had crossed the threshold, they had entered the earth. The hollow earth theory and the polar mystery became intertwined, each fueled the other. Whenever an explorer vanished, it was said they had found the entrance. Whenever a strange light flickered over the horizon, a shimmering curtain of colour known as the aurora borealis, it was said to be the inner sun shining through, its glow bending upward through the polar openings. Science offered explanations. The aurora was born of solar winds colliding with magnetic fields, a dance of charged particles high in the atmosphere. But even that explanation carried poetry. The earth, it seemed, truly was alive, breathing light at its poles, pulsing with invisible power. There is something haunting about the image of those explorers, tiny figures against a white infinity, pushing into a horizon that never arrives. They carried not only instruments but dreams, the dream that somewhere, just beyond the edge, lay a place untouched by suffering, untouched by time. Even now, satellites and submarines have mapped nearly every inch of the poles, yet questions remain. There are magnetic anomalies in both the Arctic and Antarctic, invisible distortions that pull compasses slightly askew. There are unexplained geothermal hotspots, places where the ice melts from below, where warmth rises from the depths like a breath. Scientists attribute these to magma plumes and tectonic activity. But to those who listen to the older stories, they sound like whispers from the inner world, heat rising from the sun beneath the stone. Perhaps that is why the polar regions still stir something ancient in us. They are the closest the modern world has to the mythic unknown, places where the horizon is still an invitation, not boundary. Standing on the ice, one feels the vast curve of the earth in a way that no city or forest can convey. The light moves differently there. Shadows never fall the same way twice. The sky itself seems alive, folding into colours that feel too deliberate to be random. And always, there is the wind, low, eternal, circling the globe like a slow chant. Some explorers spoke of hearing voices in that wind, not words but tones, harmonic vibrations that seem to come from beneath the ice, rising through the glaciers like music through glass. Scientists called it the song of shifting ice, the groan of glaciers. But for those who had read the old texts, it was something more, the voice of the earth, calling softly from within. In 1907, the English explorer Ernest Shackleton led his expedition into the Antarctic in search of the South Pole. He and his crew faced endless storms, blizzards and cold that cracked their skin and froze their breath. When they finally turned back, just 100 miles from their goal, Shackleton wrote in his journal, "It seemed that the land itself did not wish us to pass." That single sentence captures the spirit of all those who sought the hollow earth, the feeling that the planet is not indifferent, but aware, that it guards its secrets with the patience of stone, and perhaps it does. For beneath the ice of Antarctica, modern instruments have revealed something remarkable. Subglacial lakes sealed off for millions of years. One of the largest, Lake Vostok, lies buried beneath more than 2 miles of ice. It is completely isolated from the surface world, a vast body of water untouched since before humanity began. In its dark depths, life has been found, microorganisms that have adapted to survive without sunlight, feeding on minerals and chemical energy alone. When the discovery was announced in the late 20th century, some saw it as validation, not of hollow worlds or lost civilizations, but of possibility. If life can exist here, sealed away in total darkness for eons, perhaps the boundary between myth and reality is thinner than we think. There are even deeper places, networks of caves beneath Antarctica, warmed by geothermal vents. Explorers describe steam rising from the snow, tunnels lit by strange blue light refracted through the ice. Some of these caves stretch for miles, still unexplored. To the poet's heart, they could be the roots of legend, the veins that lead inward. Perhaps that is the truth buried within the Hollow Earth story. Not that there is an entire sunlit paradise beneath us, but that the unknown has always been right there, under our feet. Hidden worlds need not be cities of gold or crystal. They can be microbial, invisible, yet magnificent. Still, the myths persist. They are too beautiful to die. They tell us not only about the earth, but about ourselves, about the parts of the human spirit that remain unexplored. Every age needs its uncharted regions, its thresholds of wonder. For our ancestors, that threshold was the horizon of the sea. For us, it has become the silence of the poles. Imagine standing at the edge of the world, surrounded by endless snow. The compass needle trembles. The air tastes metallic, thin. Somewhere beneath, a deep hum vibrates through the soles of your boots. You look up, and the sky ripples in green and gold, alive with shifting fire. In that moment, the line between myth and fact dissolves. The rational mind tells you it is magnetism, plasma, ions. But your heart knows better. You're standing on the skin of something alive. The explorers who returned from these journeys spoke of awe, of fear, of the strange peace that comes from touching the edge of knowing. Some came back with frostbitten hands, some never came back at all. But all were changed, not because they found the hollow earth, but because the search itself hollowed something within them. It made space for wonder, and so the legend continued, passed down through sailors, scientists and dreamers, reshaping itself with each retelling. The poles remained closed, but the idea that light could exist inside the dark endured. For every myth, there is always a source, a truth buried beneath centuries of retelling, and every light, no matter how dim, must have a flame. The hollow earth's light was said to come from its heart, a sun inside the stone, a hidden source of warmth and life. Some dismissed it as fantasy, but others looked deeper, wondering if there might be truth within the symbol. And so, our journey continues, not across the ice, but through it, toward the radiant heart imagined by dreamers and mystics alike, the sun inside the stone. Chapter 4. The sun inside the stone. Imagine, for a moment, standing at the very centre of the earth, not the molten inferno described by science, but a vast and luminous space, glowing with a gentle golden light that never fades. It is not the sun we know, blazing and distant, but a second sun, softer, slower, and alive. The ceiling above glimmers like the inside of a pearl, curved and endless, and in this light, rivers flow backward through time, forests shimmer in eternal dawn, and silence hums with the weight of creation itself. This is the vision that lived within the hollow earth, the idea that beneath our world lies another, radiant and hidden. At its core burns the inner sun, a sphere of energy suspended at the heart of the planet, nurturing a secret biosphere from within. To those who believed, this was not merely poetic metaphor but physical truth. The earth, they said, was no corpse of cooled stone, but a living organism, a body with a beating heart. The idea is older than its modern name. Across cultures, the image of light within the earth appears again and again, in myth, in scripture, in sacred art. The Greeks spoke of phosphorus, the light bringer, whose glow came from beneath the horizon. In Hindu cosmology, the underworld Patala was not a place of fire and punishment, but a shining realm, filled with jeweled serpents and radiant palaces. The ancient Egyptians believed that the sun god Ra descended into the earth each night, sailing through a river of flame beneath the world to be reborn at dawn. Even in the Christian Middle Ages, when heaven and hell were rigidly divided, mystics sometimes wrote of divine light emanating from the earth itself. They believed the world was not only a stage for life, but a vessel of hidden holiness, that what we walk upon is not lifeless matter, but sanctified mystery. And so, the notion of an inner sun was not new. What changed was how it was described. When science began to study the earth as a machine rather than a myth, that light was reimagined in physical terms. If the Earth was hollow, it would need a source of illumination. Thus, in the 19th century, writers and thinkers proposed a glowing sphere, perhaps of gas, perhaps of plasma, suspended at the centre by perfect gravitational balance. The concept was elegant, almost too elegant. The inner sun would provide warmth and light to the inner world, just as the outer sun does for ours. Around it, continents and oceans would curve along the interior surface of the crust. Above them, the sky would shimmer with a faint eternal glow. No night, no seasons, only the slow breathing of day that never ends. In 1913, Marshall Gardner's A Journey to the Earth's Interior gave this vision its most detailed form. He described an inner sun some 600 miles in diameter, radiating a constant golden warmth. It was, in his words, the soul of the planet. Gardner believed that this light was the source of the auroras, that the glow seen at the poles was the inner sun peeking through the polar openings, scattering its light into the outer sky. It was a magnificent image, a union of science and spirit. To look into the aurora borealis, to see its green waves ripple across the horizon, was to glimpse the breath of that hidden sun. And for many this idea felt not only possible but beautiful. The Earth, they imagined, was not a prison of darkness, but a lamp, an eternal lantern drifting through the cosmos. But beauty and belief have always walked hand in hand with skepticism. As geology advanced, the dream began to falter. In the early 20th century, seismic studies revealed a dense metallic core, not a void. When earthquakes shook the world, their waves passed through the planet in patterns that spoke of solid layers and molten depths. There was no space for a hollow, no chamber for an inner sun. Yet even as science closed the physical door, the symbolic one remained wide open. The sun inside the stone became less a literal sphere and more an emblem of hidden illumination, of wisdom buried within ignorance. Philosophers and mystics began to use the idea as a metaphor for enlightenment. Just as the earth carries heat within its heart, so too, they said, does the human spirit carry its own inner light, unseen but unextinguished. In the late 19th century, Helena Blavatsky and her theosophical followers wove the hollow earth myth into their cosmology. They spoke of Agartha, a sacred kingdom beneath the Himalayas, powered by an inner sun both physical and spiritual. This light, they said, was the same divine energy that fuels the soul, an eternal flame that neither science nor time could extinguish. To the theosophists, the world within was not a curiosity, but a revelation. The beings who lived there, the Agarthans, were said to be far older than humanity, guardians of lost knowledge, waiting for the day when the surface world would be ready to understand. In their vision, the earth itself was a sanctuary, holding its deepest truths in its heart, protecting them from the noise and haste above. And perhaps that is why this idea still draws us, because even if we know, rationally, that the Earth's core is molten iron, we still feel the warmth of something beneath us, something older than our species, older than the oceans, older even than memory. The heat that rises through the crust is the last remnant of the planet's birth, the echo of fire from 4 billion years ago. That heat fuels volcanoes, drives tectonic plates, and warms the deep seas. In its way, the inner sun is real. It does exist. It burns still, unseen, sustaining the very world we stand on. When we look at geothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, releasing heat from within, we are looking at the planet's exhalations, breaths of a living creature. There in the abyss, strange organisms thrive, worms of glass, fish without eyes, bacteria that eat metal and light. They are not dependent on the outer sun. Their world is lit from below, not above. In them the old myth finds its echo, life. born not of the sky, but of the stone. The earth glows in many ways. The northern lights shimmer because of magnetism. The magma that rises through fissures burns red. Even deep caves carry a faint phosphorescence, a soft bioluminescence from life adapted to darkness. The planet, for all its silence, is not dark. It has always been a world of hidden fire. To those who still dream of the hollow earth, this fire is not just physics, it is purpose. They see in the molten core the symbol of endurance, the light that never dies. Just as the human heart beats ceaselessly, the Earth's heart burns. Every volcano, every geyser, every tremor is its voice, reminding us that the world beneath us is awake. And maybe, on some level, the ancient vision was right. Perhaps the inner sun was never meant to be found with instruments. Perhaps it is an invitation to look inward, to rediscover the light buried beneath our own layers of doubt, fear, and forgetting. The image of a radiant heart inside the earth mirrors something deep within the human condition. We too are layered, surface and crust, mantle and core. On the outside we're solid, defined by geography and circumstance. But inside, beneath everything, burns the small eternal flame of awareness. We are in a sense hollow beings ourselves, our lives revolving around an inner light we can never fully see. When ancient poets spoke of descent, of entering caves or catacombs, they were not only imagining a journey through the earth, they were describing the passage into the self, the discovery of what lies beneath consciousness. To walk into the earth's heart was to walk into one's own. To find the sun inside the stone was to remember the light we carry within. Even now, in our age of satellites and sensors, this image endures. In meditation rooms and temples, people speak of the inner sun as a point of warmth in the chest or between the eyes, the radiant stillness that appears when thought dissolves. In science, in spirit, in art, we return to the same symbol, a light inside the dark. And what of the myth itself, the grand vision of a world lit from within, where mountains rise upside down and seas reflect an eternal dawn? In its imagery lies something irresistibly human. It offers not escape, but symmetry. We long to believe that the universe is balanced, that if there is a sun above, there must be one below. If there is heaven beyond, there must be heaven within. Perhaps that is why the story persists, because even if we know it to be untrue, it feels right. The thought that beneath every forest, every ocean, every sleeping city, there lies another, inverted and glowing, speaks to our hunger for meaning, for connection, for endlessness. When you stand on a quiet hillside at dusk and feel the warmth still rising through the ground, you're feeling the echo of that myth. The warmth is real. The story is its poetry. The line between them blurs like heat above stone. And if we could listen closely, beyond the hum of engines, beyond the static of daily life, perhaps we would hear it, a deep, steady pulse beneath the noise, not imagination, not metaphor, but the low rhythm of the earth's own heart, vibrating through every stone, every grain of sand, every living cell. That is the inner sun, unseen, but always present. The legends say that those who reached it did not burn but awoke. They saw the world not as divided, outer and inner, heaven and earth, but as one vast continuum of light, turning endlessly inward. The same energy that fuels the stars also moves through the soil. The same fire that forms galaxies warms the smallest seed. It is not a matter of belief, but of perspective. Whether we call it molten core or divine flame, what matters is that the earth lives, not as an idea, but as a reality beneath us, constant and bright. And if, somewhere below, there truly were a world nourished by that hidden sun, a civilization that learned to live by its eternal glow, what would its people be? Like? Would they remember us, the dwellers above, who mistook the surface for the whole? Would they pity us or love us? The myths say they live in harmony, their hearts attuned to the rhythm of that golden core. Their speech is music, their breath a kind of light. They do not rush, they do not hunger. They are the memory of what we once were, and perhaps what we could become again. In the end, the sun inside the stone is not a place, but a promise that no matter how cold the surface becomes, there is always warmth below, waiting to rise again. And where there is warmth, there must be life. Now, let us follow that warmth deeper, into the oldest tales of all, where the light of the inner world touches not only the stone, but the people said to dwell within it. Beneath the glowing vault of the hidden sun, the lost civilizations await. Chapter 5. The Lost Civilizations Below. Every story of a hidden world needs its people. The hollow earth, radiant and endless, was never imagined as empty, for what is a paradise without its inhabitants? Those who dreamed of the world within saw it not as a lifeless void, but as a mirror of the world above, a civilization untouched by war, greed, or time. Down there, beneath the crust of stone and memory, they said life flourished in forms both human and divine. The oldest myths hint at them. Long before science spoke of spheres and cores, there were tales of beings who retreated beneath the earth to survive the cataclysms of creation. The Hopi people of North America tell of the ant people, wise, patient beings who sheltered humanity in vast underground caverns during the world's first great fires. They taught humans how to grow food in darkness, how to listen to the hum of the soil, and how to return to the surface when the time was right. When the Hopi emerged again, they carried with them the songs of their protectors, the rhythm of the earth itself. Far across the world, in the deserts of Tibet and the icy edges of the Himalayas, stories speak of Agartha, a kingdom hidden beneath the mountains, glowing with eternal light. Its capital, Shambhala, is said to be a city of radiant harmony, a place where knowledge flows like rivers and no shadow can dwell. The monks of old Tibet spoke of it not as a fantasy, but as truth, a sanctuary preserved through ages, where the wisdom of the ancient world endures, waiting for the surface to mature enough to understand. It is said that Shambhala can only be reached by those whose hearts are pure, that its gates are invisible to those blinded by ambition. In some accounts, travellers have wandered unknowingly through its outer tunnels, feeling warmth in the cold, light in the dark, and hearing faint voices singing deep within the stone. They return changed, unable to describe what they saw, only that it was beautiful and that it felt like remembering something they had never known. Similar tales exist in every land. The Irish spoke of the cedar, the shining people who lived beneath the green hills in palaces of light and music. To step into their halls was to lose all sense of time. A single night below could be a century above. In the Norse sagas, dwarves forged wonders in their deep forges, shaping metal with the heat of the earth's heart. The Incas believed in Paititi, a hidden realm of gold and wisdom beneath the Andes, where the spirits of kings still walked. Across continents and centuries the stories converge. Beings of light, hidden below, tunnels of stone leading to realms untouched by death, a promise that the earth shelters more than roots. These are not isolated legends. They are fragments of a single human memory, spoken in 1,000 voices. As the centuries turned and science began to chase the edges of the known world, the idea of subterranean civilizations evolved. It became less mythic and more mystical. During the late 19th century, when the world seemed to shrink under the weight of maps and machines, people began to look inward again, not only into themselves, but into the planet. writers, mystics, and explorers began to claim contact with the world beneath. In 1886, a man named Willis George Emerson wrote of the Smoky God, a tale of a Norwegian sailor, Olaf Jansen, who claimed to have sailed through an opening at the North Pole into a vast inner sea. There, he said, he found a land of towering vegetation, warm air, and cities powered by a smoky central sun. The inhabitants were giants, peaceful, radiant beings who lived for centuries, their knowledge vast and their language like music. Olaf's story was met with laughter by most, but fascination by a few. To those who believed, it was a glimpse into Agartha, or perhaps Atlantis reborn. The giants were said to be the survivors of the Great Flood, the builders of the pyramids, and the keepers of lost technology. In their world, everything glowed faintly, not from fire, but from life. Theosophical writers such as Helena Blavatsky and later Nicholas Roerich embraced these ideas. They believed the inhabitants of the inner world were not merely human, but ascended masters, beings who had transcended the limitations of time and matter. To them, Agartha was both physical and spiritual, a bridge between worlds. It was the heart of Earth's consciousness, where wisdom from ages past was preserved like flame in a hidden lamp. Roerich, the Russian painter and mystic, travelled through Central Asia in the 1920s and claimed to have heard local lamas speak of Shambhala not as legend, but as geography. He described mountain valleys that glowed at night, and pilgrims who claimed to see golden domes through the mist. One monk told him, "You cannot reach Shambhala by your strength. It opens only when the world is ready." In the early 20th century, explorers reported vast tunnel systems stretching beneath South America, Asia, and even Europe, natural and artificial caverns that fueled speculation. Could these be remnants of an ancient civilization, once global in scope, that moved underground when catastrophe struck? Some pointed to the legend of Atlantis, that fabled island swallowed by the sea. What if its survivors didn't vanish but descended, carrying their science and spirit below the crust? The idea of Atlantis as a surface reflection of a deeper world became central to the Hollow Earth myth. To its believers, the Atlanteans were not destroyed but transformed, becoming the luminous Agarthans who now guide humanity in secret. From their radiant cities, they were said to influence invention, art, and even conscience, whispering to visionaries through dreams, reminding us that we too come from light. Modern readers might dismiss these stories as allegory, but the symbols run deeper than they appear. The underworld, in every tradition, is not simply a realm of the dead or the hidden. It is the domain of rebirth. Seeds grow only in darkness. New life begins below. The civilizations imagined within the earth are mirrors of this truth. They represent the idea that wisdom too germinates in silence, that progress may begin not in noise but in stillness. If you listen to the language of these legends, you'll notice how often light and harmony accompany the underground world. In almost every version, it is not a place of despair, but of renewal. The surface world with its storms and wars is seen as transient, the inner world eternal. The deeper one travels, the closer one comes to peace. Perhaps these myths endure because they express a longing we all share, to find a place untouched by chaos, a world beneath the noise where everything makes sense. When we imagine the Agarthans or the Ant People, we are really imagining what we could be if we lived without fear. And yet, even as these tales inspire wonder, they also carry a subtle melancholy. For if such a world exists, it lies beyond reach, sealed by stone, guarded by purity of heart. To enter it would mean leaving behind everything familiar. The hollow earth, like paradise itself, is always just one veil away, but traces of it remain, not in tunnels or caverns, but in human memory. Throughout history, there have been moments when ordinary people have felt something stir beneath their feet. A low vibration, a hum too deep to be heard, a sense of presence beneath the ground. Geologists call these the murmurs of tectonic plates. Poets call them the breathing of the world. Perhaps in those vibrations there is something more, the echo of lives still moving below. In modern times, explorers of caves have reported strange sensations, the feeling of being watched, the faint sound of distant singing, the flicker of blue-green light where no source exists. Science attributes this to fatigue, oxygen deprivation, or phosphorescent minerals, but to those who have felt it, it is different. They describe it as warmth, as though the earth itself were aware of their presence. If there truly are civilizations below, they must be as old as the mountains and as patient. Imagine a people who measure time not by years, but by geological eras. For them, our history would pass like weather, brief, noisy, and soon forgotten. Their libraries, if they exist, would not be filled with paper, but with memory, knowledge etched into the resonance of the stone, preserved in vibration rather than ink. Such ideas may seem impossible, but so did much of what we now accept. Once the idea of invisible waves carrying sound was fantasy. Once the idea that life could exist without sunlight was heresy. Each generation's impossibility becomes the next generation's fact. So when we imagine the lost civilizations below, glowing cities powered by the inner sun, gardens of crystal, people of peace, perhaps we're not describing a place, but a direction. The hollow earth becomes not an alternate geography, but an aspiration, a vision of what the world could be if it turned inward, if it remembered its own light. For even if no such city lies beneath the crust, the longing for it lives in us. It appears every time we seek quiet, every time we close our eyes and imagine a simpler, more harmonious life. In that sense, Agartha and Shambhala are already real, not beneath our feet, but within our hearts. And yet, myths have a way of leaving footprints. Across the earth, archaeologists have found tunnels so vast they defy explanation, networks of passageways linking ancient sites, some carved with precision beyond their era's tools. Were they mines, ritual spaces, or the remnants of something older still? We do not know, but they remind us that beneath every story lies stone, and beneath every stone, another story. Perhaps one day we will descend far enough to find that truth. For now, the lost civilizations remain what they have always been, half memory, half hope. But their light still shines in our collective imagination, flickering like the echo of the inner sun. And if we close our eyes and listen, we may still hear them, faint and distant yet unmistakably human, singing the old songs of the earth. Their echoes are not the only ones that rise from the depths, for beneath their myths, beneath our own, something older still hums, a vibration felt through the soles of our feet, resonating through the crust like a heartbeat. It is the voice of the planet itself, and so we listen, as they once did, to the sounds that rise from below, the echoes from the deep. Chapter 6. Echoes from the deep. There is a sound the earth makes when no one is listening. It is not the sharp crack of stone or the groan of mountain shifting, but something lower, a hum so deep that it slips beneath hearing, moving through rock and ocean like the pulse of a living creature. Scientists call it microseisms, the background vibration of the planet. Dreamers call it something else, the Earth's breath, the song of its heart. If you were to stand alone in the middle of the desert, or on the floor of a cave far from wind and sea, and place your hand against the ground, you might feel it, a faint trembling, rhythmic and endless. It is the voice of everything beneath. Magma rising, plates colliding, oceans pressing on the crust. The whole world is in motion, and that motion sings. To the first humans who heard it, that vibration was alive. It came not from physics, but from presence. When wind howled through caverns and tunnels, when earthquakes groaned through stone, they believed it was the whisper of gods below, speaking in a language too vast for words. Every rumble of thunder was an echo from the deep. Today we know that sound travels through stone far more easily than through air. The crust of the earth is a great resonant chamber, a cathedral of pressure and vibration. Every step, every heartbeat, every storm leaves a trace in its music. Even cities have their signature hum, a chord made of engines, footsteps and trains, blending with the ancient frequencies that have always been there. But before the language of science, before seismographs and instruments, these sounds were mystery. To the ancient Greeks, they were the voices of titans imprisoned beneath Olympus, still struggling to rise. To the Maori of New Zealand, they were the growls of Ruaumoko, the god of earthquakes stirring in his sleep. The Hopi heard the earth singing after rain and believed it was gratitude, the ground rejoicing at being fed. And even now, in our time of satellites and data, the sounds of the earth can still unsettle. In 1991, residents of Taos, New Mexico began reporting a low, continuous hum, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, heard by some and not by others. It drove a few to sleeplessness, others to curiosity. Scientists investigated with microphones, seismic instruments, and theories ranging from electromagnetic interference to atmospheric resonance. No single cause was ever confirmed. They found similar reports across the world: Bristol in England, Kokomo in Indiana, Auckland in New Zealand, Windsor in Canada. Everywhere, the same thing. A sound just at the edge of hearing, more felt than heard, a vibration in the bones rather than the ears. The Taos hum, the Bristol hum, the Windsor hum. Some believed they were natural, others thought they were mechanical, industrial, or even extraterrestrial. But the effect was the same. Humanity pausing to listen to the planet and realizing it was not silent after all. Scientists later discovered that the Earth emits a continuous background vibration, even without earthquakes or storms. The cause lies in the ceaseless pounding of ocean waves against the seafloor, the whisper of wind across mountains, the pull of gravity itself. These movements combine to create low-frequency sounds, too deep for us to hear. Frequencies below 10 cycles per second, far beneath the range of human hearing. But they are always there, rolling through the crust like invisible tides. When seismologists map these vibrations, the data resembles a heartbeat, spikes and lulls, rhythms and rests. Some even call it the Earth's pulse. It is a strange comfort, this knowledge, that even in stillness the planet moves, even in silence it speaks, and yet not every sound from below has found its explanation. In 1997, an oceanic microphone near Antarctica captured a noise so powerful that it was heard across thousands of miles of sea. It was called the bloop, a deep resonant sound that rose in pitch like a living creature's call. Scientists were bewildered. The frequency suggested something organic, but it was louder than any known whale, any engine, any known phenomenon. For years it became a mystery, whispered about in forums, in documentaries, in late-night conversations. A voice from the deep, crying out from the coldest sea on Earth. Eventually, researchers at NOAA concluded that the bloop was most likely the sound of ice fracturing, massive glaciers cracking and shifting underwater. Yet even that explanation feels poetic. Ice too is alive in its way. It moves, it sighs, it remembers. The deep ocean, the last unexplored frontier, keeps its secrets well. But imagine what those first recordings must have felt like, to hear, from miles below the sea, the groan of something immense, older than humanity, moving in darkness. Imagine the thrill and the unease. For those who believed in the hollow earth, the bloop was not ice at all, but the cry of something vast within the planet shifting in its sleep. A breath, a heartbeat, a reminder that we do not yet know what lies beneath. In 2011, another sound joined the mystery, a low harmonic hum recorded by scientists studying the Earth's seismic background. It pulsed at a constant rhythm, repeating every 20 minutes. Some called it the Earth's drumming. The waves of the ocean were beating time against the crust, sending a slow, steady rhythm through the stone. Even without wind or storm, the planet played its own quiet music. When you listen to these sounds, sped up into audible range, they resemble the human voice, deep, soft, resonant, like a chant. It is easy to imagine monks in some subterranean monastery beneath the crust, singing to keep the world awake. To believers, these modern findings are not dismissals of myth, but confirmations of it. The earth hums because it lives, it breathes, it dreams, and perhaps what ancient people called the voices of gods were simply the same waves of sound, felt in the bones before we learned to measure them. There is an old Tibetan story that says the earth remembers everything that happens upon it, that every footstep, every song, every sorrow leaves a trace in its vibration. When you stand very still in silence, they say, the ground can tell you stories if you listen long enough. It will whisper of rains, of births, of fires, of empires fallen. Geology agrees, in its own way. The strata of the earth are records of its life, layers of ocean, forest, ash and bone. Fossils are not merely the remains of the dead, but the earth's memory, written in mineral script. In every stone, the planet speaks of what it once held. Perhaps sound is the same, the invisible record of everything that has ever happened, still reverberating through the crust, like notes that never stop ringing. If that is true, then the world beneath our feet is not silent at all. It is an archive of echoes, a cathedral filled with unending song. Some of these echoes are stranger still. Deep in certain caves, explorers have reported the phenomenon of singing stones, pillars or walls that ring like bells when struck. In India's ancient temples, some stone columns were carved to produce musical tones, their harmonics tuned precisely to sacred chants. The earth, shaped by human hand, became an instrument through which the hidden resonance of matter could be heard. Modern acousticians have discovered that every material has its frequency. Every mountain, every desert, every city vibrates at a unique pitch. When the wind moves across it, or the ocean presses against it, it sings in that frequency. Together these notes form the music of the world. It is not coincidence that so many myths describe the creation of the universe as sound, the word, the Om, the song of the spheres. The ancients may not have known of seismic resonance, but they knew its feeling. They felt the hum of the world beneath their feet, and they called it divine. And yet, the Hollow Earth stories go further. They tell of people who learned not only to hear this music, but to live by it. The civilizations of Agartha, of Shambhala, were said to build their temples according to the frequencies of the planet's core. Their cities were harmonized to the Earth's vibration, their language a form of tone. Some legends say that their technology was not mechanical but musical, that their vehicles moved by resonance, their medicine by sound, their light by harmony. To the rational mind, this is fantasy, yet modern physics hints at something oddly familiar. Matter itself is vibration, atoms and energy dancing in frequency. The universe is not solid but rhythmic. The same principle that vibrates the string of a violin also shapes the orbit of a moon. Perhaps the myth-makers, in their intuition, were closer to truth than they knew. When you think of the Earth in this way, not as a ball of rock but as an instrument playing its own eternal song, everything changes. Mountains are chords, rivers are melodies, earthquakes are brief crescendos, thunder are the drumbeats of storm, and beneath it all, steady and unbroken, the bass line of the planet continues, a sound deeper than silence. It is no wonder that ancient priests and philosophers sought meaning in this music. It speaks to something older than language, something we recognize without understanding. The same hum that moves through stone moves through us. Our heartbeat echoes the pulse of the world. Our breath follows its rhythm. We are, quite literally, tuned to the earth. In this sense, the echoes from the deep are not only geological but spiritual. They remind us that the distance between myth and fact is not as wide as it seems. The world is alive and we are part of its song. The hollow earth, whether real or imagined, is an image of that unity. The idea that beneath the surface of everything lies harmony, waiting to be heard. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, the echoes will lead us somewhere, to a deeper understanding of the world, to a deeper understanding of ourselves. For now the hum continues, steady, patient, eternal. The earth sings beneath our feet and the air above vibrates in sympathy. Somewhere between those two realms we exist, children of both silence and sound. But as science begins to measure the hum, to translate it into patterns and charts, another realization dawns. If the planet is alive, what else might live within it? If sound can travel through the crust for thousands of miles, who might be listening? The echoes fade, but a question remains, a question that will carry us into the next descent. If the Earth truly hums, who or what might hum back? Chapter 7. The Hollow Earth in Science and Skepticism. For all its beauty, every myth must eventually face the light. The hollow Earth, with its inner suns and radiant cities, began not in deceit, but in curiosity, a yearning to understand what could not yet be seen. Yet as science grew sharper and instruments more exact, that yearning was tested. What had once been imagination became a question for measurement, and the dream of a world within began to collide with the world without. It started, as so many things do, with data. By the mid-19th century, scientists had begun to study the Earth not as an infinite mystery, but as a structure, using pendulums, magnetism, and the behaviour of gravity. They learned that the planet's density was far greater than a hollow shell could explain. The pull of weight, the tilt of orbit, the tremor of quakes, all spoke of a world filled from core to crust. Theorists like Halley and Simmers had imagined elegant interiors. Geology answered with mass and motion. When seismology emerged, it provided the final blow to literal hollowness. Every earthquake sends waves through the planet, compressions that ripple outward in measurable ways. These waves change speed depending on what they pass through. By studying them, scientists mapped the unseen layers of the Earth: crust, mantle, outer core, inner core. Each pulse revealed a boundary, a transition, a secret of stone. There was no room for air or paradise. The deep Earth was not empty, but alive with pressure and fire. And yet, even as evidence hardened against the hollow Earth, fascination deepened. Because for many, the myth had never been about geology. It was about possibility. The idea that somewhere beneath all explanation, mystery still breathed. The scientists who dismantled the theory often admitted as much. Even as they proved the planet's solidity, they confessed to awe at what their instruments revealed. The inner world they discovered was stranger than any legend. liquid iron spinning faster than the crust above, generating the magnetic field that shields life itself. Currents of molten rock circulating over millions of years, shifting continents like dreams. Crystals of nickel the size of mountains, frozen under pressures beyond imagination. The Earth's interior was not hollow. It was a cosmic engine, radiant and alive. In a sense, science replaced one wonder with another. The legend spoke of an inner sun. Geophysics found an inner furnace. The myth said the Earth was hollow but luminous. The data said it was solid yet glowing from within. Beneath the metaphors, the difference began to blur. Still, skepticism persisted, and not without reason. For centuries, humanity had been deceived by illusions of scale, believing the stars were close, that the sea had an edge, that diseases were born of air. Each time, certainty gave way to humility. So when skeptics mocked those who believed in hidden worlds, others reminded them that hidden worlds had always existed, only smaller than expected. In 1977, a submersible exploring the Pacific Ocean stumbled upon hydrothermal vents, fissures where the Earth's molten breath poured into the deep sea. Around them, life thrived in complete darkness, feeding not on sunlight but on the chemistry of stone. These ecosystems had never been imagined by science. They were, in a way, the hollow Earth made real. Life sustained not by the surface, but by the hidden fire below. The discovery reshaped biology. It proved that life could flourish in isolation, under pressure, in darkness. Conditions once thought uninhabitable. It reminded us that the unknown does not vanish simply because we measure it. For every mystery disproved, another begins. Perhaps that is why the hollow Earth refuses to die. It is no longer about tunnels or entrances, but about humility, a recognition that the surface is only part of the story. Every layer of understanding conceals another. The myth survives because it captures something timeless, our need to believe that the world, and we within it, are not yet finished. Modern geology has indeed painted a detailed portrait of the planet's core, but even that picture is incomplete. The mantle remains largely unexplored. We have drilled less than 8 miles into the crust, a fraction of the journey to the centre. What lies below remains not speculation but absence. The Earth may not be hollow, but it is still unknown. Some scientists have suggested that deep beneath the crust, at extreme pressure, entire ecosystems might exist. Microbial life feeding on hydrogen and iron, thriving in darkness. These deep biospheres, discovered in recent decades, extend miles underground, challenging our definition of habitability. There are more living organisms below the surface than all the animals above combined. The Earth, it turns out, is alive from the inside out, and so the myth folds back on itself. The hollow Earth was wrong in structure, but right in spirit. The surface world is not alone. Beneath our feet, life continues, not in gleaming cities, but in cells, in silence, in persistence. The myth, stripped of its fantasy, becomes metaphor again. To dismiss it entirely would be to forget what it represents. Every era needs its version of the hollow Earth, a reminder that what we see is never all there is. The ancients looked downward and imagined gods. We look upward and imagine galaxies. Both are acts of the same faith. In the end, skepticism and wonder are not enemies. They are partners in a dance that has lasted as long as humanity itself, one reaching for truth, the other for meaning. Science gives us the structure, myth gives us the soul. The Earth holds both. When you stand outside on a quiet night and feel the faint vibration beneath your feet, remember, it is not just stone. It is history. It is motion. It is every myth that ever tried to speak. And somewhere within that hum, deep, low, and endless, the echo of the dream remains. Beyond skepticism, beyond science, another question stirs. For every explorer who mapped the poles, another vanished into legend. Some went seeking proof, others simply disappeared into silence. And in that silence, the earth may have kept them. Now, as we listen to the hum fade, we turn toward those who never returned, the explorers who vanished into the deep. Chapter 8. The Explorers Who Never Returned. There is a peculiar stillness that follows the last sound of a human voice in the wilderness, that moment when the call fades and the earth answers with silence. In that space between sound and disappearance, history often begins. For every explorer who came home with maps and journals, there were others who left only questions. The Hollow Earth, as both legend and obsession, has its share of these ghosts, men who chased the world's edge and vanished into the white. Their stories begin with the same impulse that drives all discovery, the need to know what lies beyond. But in the case of the Hollow Earth, beyond meant beneath, a direction far older and more primal than the stars. It is one thing to look upward, into the endless dark of space. It is another to descend, willingly, into the unknown beneath your own feet. The first of these seekers was John Cleves Sims Jr., whose circular pamphlets in the early 1800s announced to all the world that the earth was hollow and habitable within. He begged for an expedition to the poles, convinced that the entrances lay there. Sims died before the journey could be made, but his followers continued his dream. They proposed voyages to Congress, designed ships for the ice, and spoke of a new geography, one that would unite science and salvation. No one reached Sims's inner world, but a century later, others would claim to have done so. Among them was the Norwegian sailor Olaf Jansen, whose story of the smoky god told of a journey through the northern seas into a hidden land bathed in soft light. He and his father, he said, had lived for 2 years among giants who spoke an ancient language and worshipped a central sun that glowed through a haze of perpetual dawn. When they returned, the sea swallowed his father, and Olaf's story was dismissed as madness. He died unknown, but his tale lived on, a whisper that somewhere, beneath the ice, a door had opened. In the early 20th century, the myth took on a new shape. Admiral Richard Byrd's polar expeditions, vast and heroic undertakings of science and endurance, became tangled in rumour. His official records told of flights over endless fields of ice, but the legends that followed spoke of something more. They claimed Byrd had seen green valleys and warm air at the pole, had encountered advanced beings in radiant craft, had been warned to halt humanity's nuclear madness. His alleged secret diary, published long after his death, described a land beyond the poles, where light emanated from within the earth. No evidence ever supported these claims. Yet the story fit too perfectly with the old yearning to die quietly. A man of honour, alone in the white silence, glimpses paradise, returns changed, and is silenced by powers above. It was myth wearing the clothes of modernity, and it spread like fire. Byrd's legend inspired a new generation of explorers and fringe theorists. In the 1930s, rumours spread of German expeditions to Antarctica, seeking the entrances to the inner world. Expeditions allegedly driven by occult ambition. Some said they found caverns warm beneath the ice, powered by geothermal vents, and built bases there to wait out the fall of war. After 1945, these whispers evolved into darker fantasies, that remnants of the Third Reich had retreated beneath the surface, into the hollow earth to rebuild in secret. None of this was ever proven, yet the idea endured. It fused with UFO lore and Cold War paranoia, filling radio waves and pulp novels with tales of subterranean civilizations, lost colonies, and secret technologies. It was no longer science or faith. It was modern mythology playing out beneath the polar sun. And still, even stripped of its conspiracies, the deeper truth remained. Countless men and women vanished in pursuit of the unknown. Ships that left for the Arctic never returned. Pilots flew into blizzards and were lost to static and snow. Explorers descended into cave systems and never re-emerged. Some died, others simply disappeared, leaving behind half-filled notebooks and broken compasses. When the explorers of the 19th and early 20th centuries set out, they faced a kind of silence that modern technology can no longer know. There were no satellites, no radios beyond a few miles. A man could vanish a day's walk from his base and never be found. In the age before rescue, every expedition was a wager against infinity. The polar journals are full of quiet tragedy. Captain Robert Falcon Scott, frozen in his tent just miles from salvation. The Franklin expedition, its ships trapped in ice, its men walking into oblivion under the Aurora's green flame. Even when their deaths were documented, the details were so surreal, so dreamlike, that they entered the same mythology as those who vanished entirely. The Arctic devours certainty. The ice erases intent. Those who sought the hollow earth were not necessarily wrong, only too early. Beneath Antarctica's crust lie networks of caverns, warmed by volcanic heat, their walls slick with ice that glows blue in the dark. Beneath the Arctic Ocean, vast mountain ranges rise unseen, older than any human story. These are not worlds of giants or golden cities, but they are no less miraculous. If Sims or Bird could see them now, they might recognize their visions, translated into geology. Some modern carvers descending miles into the planet's veins describe sensations that sound almost mystical. The loss of time, the feeling of vast space pressing in silence, the faint vibration in the bones as though the earth itself were breathing. The temperature rises, the air thickens, and the body begins to forget what daylight means. In such places, even skepticism dissolves. The world beneath is not merely darkness, it is presence, heavy, watchful, alive. Perhaps the explorers who never returned did not find a paradise, but something quieter. Perhaps they reached a point where the human mind, faced with the endless dark, simply surrendered. The deeper one goes, the less the world above matters. Sound fades, thought slows, and in that final stillness, one might feel the hum of the planet and mistake it for eternity. Those who vanish are never truly lost. The earth keeps them, their bones, their journals, their footsteps pressed into ice, all sink slowly into the planet's memory. Over time, they become part of the strata, their dreams fossilized alongside the shells and dust of eons. The explorers sought to reach the center. Instead, they became part of it. We often imagine discovery as conquest, a flag planted, a map filled. But perhaps the truest discoveries are the ones that consume their seekers. The hollow earth was never meant to be found. It was meant to be pursued. Its entrances move like mirages forever one step beyond the horizon, and those who chase them remind us that wonder is not measured in what is reached, but in what is risked. As we close the pages of their vanished journeys, this silence remains, a silence so vast that even their names are swallowed. And yet, if you stand in the snow on a windless night, you might still hear something, not words, but a low resonance, like memory itself speaking through the ground. It could be the wind, or it could be the voices of those who went below and never came back, still echoing faintly through the bones of the world. And beyond that hum, faint but steady, another rhythm waits, the sound of myth reborn in the age of reason. For stories too have their own explorers, and they never stop returning to the same threshold. Beyond the silence of the lost lies, the murmur of belief renewed, the myth reborn in modern times. Chapter 9. The myth reborn in modern times. Stories never die. They only change their shape. What once lived in parchment and prayer now flows through circuits and screens. The hollow earth, once whispered by philosophers and explorers, found new breath in the age of electricity, a time when myth and machine collided and imagination learned to travel at the speed of light. The 20th century was an age that should have buried legends, but instead it resurrected them. The telescope had mapped the stars, the atom had been split. The poles, once veiled in mystery, had been flown over, photographed, and mapped. And yet, even as the physical world shrank beneath the weight of discovery, the unseen world began to expand. The more we measured, the more we missed. Radio, film, and later the internet became the new temples of wonder. Myths that once required lifetimes to spread now crossed oceans in seconds. And amid this technological noise, the hollow earth returned, not as science, but as story, as dream, as rebellion against the flatness of certainty. It began quietly, in the static of radio waves. In 1947, a broadcast known as the Shaver Mystery electrified America's imagination. A pulp writer named Richard Shaver claimed that he had discovered an ancient race of beings living beneath the earth, the Deros and Teros, remnants of a forgotten civilization whose machine still hummed beneath our feet. According to Shaver, these subterranean beings influenced human thought, sometimes benevolently, sometimes with malice. His stories, published in magazines like Amazing Stories, blurred the line between confession and fiction. Readers wrote thousands of letters claiming they too had heard strange voices from the ground. Critics called it hysteria. Believers called it revelation. What mattered was not the truth, but the feeling it awakened, that the Earth, even in the atomic age, was still mysterious. Then came the radio plays. Orson Welles' War of the Worlds had already shown how fear could echo through a broadcast, but programs about hidden civilizations and hollow planets carried a softer note: curiosity, nostalgia, yearning. The voice of the myth had changed from terror to tenderness, from warning to wonder. As the decades turned, science fiction inherited the dream. Jules Verne had already imagined a journey to the centre of the Earth, but new storytellers gave it modern form. Films like The Core or At the Earth's Core reimagined the ancient myth through the lens of adventure and discovery. Beneath the action and spectacle, the same question endured. Could the Earth itself still hold secrets? The answer, for many, was yes. The Cold War years gave new life to the idea of worlds within worlds, hidden bases, underground cities, nuclear shelters. The planet became a metaphor for fear itself. Governments carved deep bunkers beneath mountains, storing secrets and supplies against the end of days. To some, these new subterranean networks were proof that humanity had begun to imitate the myth, building its own inner world beneath the crust just as the ancients had dreamed. But as the century turned and technology rendered the planet transparent, the hollow earth transformed once again. It became digital. In the early days of the internet, message boards and forums served as modern campfires. Beneath usernames and avatars, people gathered to tell stories of secret tunnels beneath the poles, of maps suppressed by NASA, of explorers who saw more than they were allowed to speak. Some claim that satellites had captured images of vast openings at the poles, later blurred or hidden. Others link the legend to UFO sightings, suggesting that the inner world was not just home to ancient humans, but to visitors, that what we call aliens are simply beings from the Earth's hidden interior. The myth expanded, absorbing everything that touched it. Atlantis became Agartha. Shambhala became a lost city beneath the Antarctic ice. Every mystery, from the Bermuda Triangle to strange disappearances in national parks, became evidence of the same secret geography, a world within the world. To skeptics, it was absurd. To believers, it was hope. Because the deeper truth of the Hollow Earth has never been geological. It is psychological. It is about the human need to believe there is more. In a universe that grows more explainable each year, we ache for wonder that cannot be mapped. Online, this ache took new forms. Digital artists rendered glowing caverns and inverted continents beneath the crust. Storytellers wrote novels and films about lost civilizations returning. Even scientists, though careful in their language, contributed to the mystery by discovering vast subsurface oceans and networks of microbial life deeper than anyone thought possible. The Earth, in its way, confirmed the myth, not as a hollow, but as a hive. And so, the old legend began to evolve into metaphor. The Hollow Earth became not a place, but a symbol of introspection, of turning inward. In meditation, psychology, and art, the inner world became shorthand for the subconscious, for the depths of the self. Just as explorers once sought hidden lands beneath the poles, we began to explore the landscapes of our own minds. The descent became spiritual. Perhaps that was always its purpose. For every map drawn, every tunnel imagined, the Hollow Earth has pointed us toward the same truth, that mystery is not a flaw in understanding, but a feature of it. The myth survives because it serves a human need that facts alone cannot satisfy. The need to dream, to search, to believe that the story of the world is still unfolding. Even now, the myth whispers. You can find it in documentaries on late-night television, in YouTube videos with solemn narrators and haunting music, in digital art glowing with the light of imaginary suns. It thrives not because people are deceived, but because they are enchanted. And perhaps, somewhere within the static of conspiracy and curiosity, there remains something genuine, a pulse of wonder too old to die. The idea that the Earth, this ancient companion of humanity, still has rooms we have not entered. Modern explorers, armed not with ships but with sensors, continue to find surprises. Beneath the ocean floor, scientists have discovered vast reservoirs of water, locked in mineral form, 3 times the volume of all the surface seas. Beneath Antarctica, subglacial lakes the size of entire countries lie sealed under miles of ice, untouched for millions of years. Life thrives there, blind and ancient in darkness. And so the old question remains, if such worlds exist within our reach, how far-fetched is it to imagine others deeper still? The Hollow Earth, it seems, has never truly been disproved. It has only been reinterpreted, not as a physical space to find, but as a metaphor for the unexplored, for the parts of the Earth and of ourselves that remain hidden, waiting, alive. Every generation rediscovers the myth in its own way. For the ancients, it was a realm of gods and souls. For the explorers, it was geography. For the digital age, it is imagination, a world we visit through light and sound, through words and dreams. The medium changes, but the desire endures. Even the phrase Hollow Earth carries an echo of poetry. It suggests both emptiness and possibility, a vessel waiting to be filled. To believe in it is not to deny science, but to confess longing, the longing for depth in an age of surfaces. And perhaps that is where all these stories converge, not beneath our feet, but within our hearts. For we too contain hidden worlds, layers of thought, of memory, of mystery that even we cannot fully reach. To look inward is to descend. To understand is to listen to the hum of our own depths. The myth survives because we do. And as the night draws near and the sound of the world softens, maybe the question matters less than the listening. Whether hollow or solid, the earth remains alive, a quiet sphere turning endlessly beneath the stars, carrying all our stories within. So, if you're still awake, dear traveller, close your eyes once more. Let the world beneath you become soft, like sand. Imagine the layers of stone and time dissolving into light. Somewhere deep below, the inner sun still burns, steady, patient, eternal. It shines not to be found, but to be remembered. Perhaps that light has never been physical at all. Perhaps it is the same glow that flickers within you, the human heart's unending hunger for meaning, for wonder, for connection. And if tonight you find comfort in the thought of that hidden world, in the idea that beneath all reason there lies something still unknown, then you have found what every explorer sought, not proof, but peace. For the hollow earth has always been less about what lies below and more about what lies within. And as you drift towards sleep, let that thought settle softly in your chest. The earth turns, the stars fade, the hum continues, and somewhere, deep below the surface of dreaming, a door remains open. Good night, traveller. Thank you for listening. And if these quiet journeys bring you peace, remember to leave a small light burning for the next dreamer who passes by. Until our next descent, sleep well beneath the world,